Blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and all around the wall. A splotch, a blotch, be careful of the blob.
Welcome to Werezilla's Retrospective. I'm your host, Werezilla. You ever wonder what makes a monster truly scary? It's just how different they are from us. And you don't get much more different than the Blob. Unlike other alien invader films, the Blob took a very simple approach, a mass of goo that eats everything in its path, growing bigger with each victim. It was a nice change of pace, and yet it fits in perfectly with the 50s setting. The Blob, of course, is also remembered for its updated remake in the 80s. But before you get any ideas, don't worry. I learned my lesson from that other remake I reviewed a few years ago. That having a different opinion to everyone else is wrong. Over a decade before the remake, during the age of hippies, there was an actual sequel to the original film, Beware the Blob. But while many people remember the original film fondly, as Blobfest is any indication, the sequel isn't remembered as much. Given what we are about to see, there may be a good reason for that. We open with some guy sleeping in a tent in his own home. Huh? This is Chester, and he was working on an oil pipeline in Alaska and came across the frozen remains of the Blob from the first movie and kept a specimen with him. You can probably guess how bad of an idea that is. Oh, and all of this exposition is delivered to us through lovey-dovey dialogue between him and his wife, and using camera angles like this.
You've been gone 3 whole months. 3 months. And just putting down a pipeline that absolutely nobody wants. And the first thing you do when you get home, you go fishing.
You know that's not the first thing I did when I got back home.
Mercifully, this ends when she has to feed the cat, which the Blob then eats. Low blow, Blob. Low blow. Chester's wife is also subsequently eaten, but Chester doesn't notice because he's watching the original film on TV.
They're all green. Can I see one thing on?
Neither can I. The lighting and cinematography for this movie is so poor that you could easily confuse it for one of my earlier videos. Meanwhile, a group of friends are preparing for a birthday party, and I'm sure they're supposed to be teenagers, but the actors don't look it. Steve McQueen was 28 when he was in the original movie, but was a good enough actor to pull off portraying a teenager. Are any of the actors in this movie?
Will you? Get a little quieter at my place. I'll fix you an avocado sandwich, okay? With bacon.
Okay, I like bacon.
Nope! So Lisa, the only one who has a name, at least that I'm aware of, heads over to pick up Chester, but he's too engrossed in the Blob at the moment. She rushes over to get her boyfriend Bobby, driving past some guy along the way who obsesses over getting the police to arrest her for driving past her. Seriously. Yeah, she had the fast forward button, was speeding, which made him swerve onto a sidewalk, but this guy is making a much bigger deal at it than he needs to.
I mean, I'm a man with certain influence in this town.
Right,
this is my home right here. I have a business up here. Why don't you get in the car and... how can I prove it if you... Here, that's her. Hey, that's it. Hey!
So Lisa and Bobby head back over to Chester's but find the Blob is already gone. They alert the sheriff of murder, all while having to deal with this jackass. And before you ask, yes, this goes on throughout the entire movie. At least the sheriff is just as sick of this as the audience is. Lisa and Bobby head over to their party, but all Lisa can do is ramble on and on about what she saw, all while using whiny dialogue like this.
Believe me, I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up.
In on this?
No, everybody, you gotta listen to me. This terrible thing happened tonight.
Well, Lisa, I warned you about Bobby.
No.
Yeah, a good effort, but she won't. So the next 20 minutes of this movie is easily some of the most blatant filler I've seen in a horror film. We get a number of scenes of the Blob appearing and killing people. 3 things wrong with these scenes. 1, they consist of people who never appeared in the movie before this scene, so why should I care? 2, Every single one of these scenes drag on way longer than needed, and not just the scene itself, but individual shots. And 3. Among its victims are Burgess Meredith and a little dog. I am not amused. Finally, the Blob attacks plot-relevant characters, namely Bobby and Lisa, as it tries to eat its way through their car. Finally, a scene with some tension. Dare I say it has the tone of the original film? So they accidentally turn on the air conditioner, which drives the Blob off. Yeah, I know cold is its weakness, but I kind of assumed it was extreme cold like a meat freezer, not just any lack of heat. So anyway, Bobby and Lisa try to warn the nearby bowling alley of the Blob's approach. Though I do wonder how they know it will come here specifically. Maybe they read the script in advance. Hey, what's that on the table? Is that the script? But of course they aren't taken seriously because the guy in charge of the bowling alley is this asshole. Learning about the ruckus Bobby and Lisa are making, the sheriff leads a squad to the bowling alley to investigate. And now it's time for the money shot. You know what I'm talking about. Ugh. Yeah, it's not bad looking in most shots, but in others it looks more like bloody water than the Blob. So Bobby, Lisa, and the owner escape into the ice skating rink and do try to warn the sheriff outside using a loudspeaker, which he shouldn't be able to hear since they're inside, but whatever. And after it becomes too muffled to hear, the sheriff assumes they're dead and plans to burn the place down to destroy the Blob. But he sure is taking his sweet-ass time, if I do say so myself. Remembering that cold is its weakness, the owner lets them know that they can freeze the ice rink to stop it. Bobby climbs the ropes along the ceiling to reach the controls and... Wait, go back a minute. They reused a shot of Lisa screaming from earlier in the movie? Why? Did they just assume the poor lighting would hide it? 'Cause it didn't.
Building! Now you people get over there! What are you doing?
Okay, how the hell did he get outside? He was on the rafters. Anyway, Bobby shows the sheriff the now frozen Blob, and we linger on the shot of a news guy interviewing the sheriff about the incident way too long. But it would seem he left his flashlight on the ground.
If it hadn't been stopped, this Blob might have devoured America, or perhaps even the entire planet. My deputies and the people did a superb job. I've been in telephone communication with the President of the United States, and he wishes me to thank everyone for their help in what shall go down in history as possibly the greatest personal danger to ever confront mankind.
Get a fire extinguisher? Save his life? You really don't want to end it on that face, do you? I can sort of see the appeal of a sequel like this. Seeing the Blob eating people and having them all run in terror is part of what made the original so memorable. However, it helps if you have likable characters, which this sequel does not have. Lisa's grating, Bobby's bland, the bowling alley owner is irritating, and everyone else is just here to die. And since we don't know any of them, why should we be scared? Don't get me wrong, the Blob is a terrifying concept, but when it's people we don't care about, you feel nothing. But even with the typical horror movie mistakes, there is still something else that drags this movie down. It's lighting and cinematography. Now, I've worked on short films before, so I know it is a pain to get the lighting just right in a movie, and when it doesn't work, you get shit like this. Especially when your shoot is almost entirely at night. The day scenes aren't much better, though that might just be the film quality. But even worse is the pacing. You don't make shots last as long as they do in this movie, or the audience will get bored. It's understandable if it's a stylistic choice, but that's not what I got here. We just linger so the movie will be slightly longer, and that is something you never want the audience to notice. And before we wrap up, there is one last thing I need to mention. The alternate title to this movie is Son of Blob. That makes this the second movie where the eponymous son is not the son at all. And the third time we've had a misleading title. Fan-friggin-tastic.